let's just jump on into it, Pat. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. Obviously, the TTS League started, and a card that caught your eye looking through the stats was none other than We Are Groot.
Yeah, We Are Groot is a card that I've been thinking about quite a bit recently as I've been playing some Guardians of the Galaxy, and I thought it would be a fun one to discuss for Sleeve It or Heave It. Um, Partly because I haven't made up my own mind about whether or not it's worth including. And then when I looked through the stats, I saw that the community was also pretty divided. It had an almost exactly 50-50 split between people that took it when they played Groot and people who didn't.
I guess let's recap the card, right? Which is an active card that Groot can use across some 3 power, and Groot and allied characters within range 4 may remove 2 damage. So, first of all, range 4 is gigantic. You could
Yeah.
theoretically heal a ton of healing off of this, but I think you have to distill down if I only heal 1 or 2 characters, is it worthwhile?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is maybe. I don't know. The quote unquote nerf to Groot, where he can only heal himself once per round, does mean he's more likely to want to benefit from the healing of We Are Groot. Where previously he was able to heal himself for 6 if he wanted to, now he can only heal himself for 3 per activation. So there's a slight thing there. But I think Guardian's attrition is a really real list. I don't think we're seeing Groot taking a lot out of Guardians. Guardians inherently lend themselves to going wide. So I like the theoretical of being able to heal a lot of characters there, because you do end up just taking a lot of weird chip tertiary damage on these characters. Characters that should daze out to an attack end up surviving on 1 or 2 hit points. And like we talked about before, they're really wide. So I like the card, but it does kind of fight with what Guardians want to do, right? Which is just, I want to deal as much damage to you as possible.
Exactly. And there's no shortage of cards that let them do that, plus other character specific cards you might want to take that you might think are better for that specific game plan, right? I don't think Guardians in general is taking very many tough characters. Groot and Drax aside, there's a couple there that are worth considering, but the core of the team is so often Nebula, Rocket, and Star Lord, none of whom are especially resilient, right? In fact, Rocket is one of the most fragile characters. So there's definitely some tension, and working out how valuable is this heal, like you said, it's a little bit difficult to quantify. If you compare it to something like Medpack, it's not as good if it's healing only one character. It's healing for less, and it's costing more power, although it is a longer range. But as soon as you go to more characters, it's a very cost efficient, very effective heal. The thing is, though, not all characters are created equal, and it might be you'd rather heal a character like Black Panther or Thanos for 3 stamina rather than top up some characters who are fragile and are just going to lose that stamina very quickly, even after you've mended them.
Yeah, the comparison to MedPack obviously happens a lot. And I think the other thing we need to point out in the comparison, right, is MedPack has the flexibility to be used on any character's activation, including the character. If I want to heal Groot, right, I can activate Rocket, MedPack Groot up, right? We Are Groot is obviously tied to Groot's activation.
No, I don't believe it is.
What are we talking about?
Unaffiliated
MedPack?
active, Groot can spend 3 power to play this card. Groot and allied
Oh, it
characters
doesn't
within
have to
4
be
of
his
him remove
action. That's a
2.
good. It doesn't have to be his
No.
activation.
So
That's
it's actually
better.
more flexible, right?
It is
Because
more. Yep.
Medpack, you have to be your activation to play the card. You can play this in any character's activation to get a big heal, which is
See,
really cool.
I was already high on the card, Pat. I like it even more now. I've been playing this
Yeah.
card wrong in my limited Guardians games. Um, but I think what you ends up coming down to it is what cards are you taking and what card are you missing out on, right? Because it ends up where you have to compare the 2 cards together, and one of them doesn't get taken.
Right. Um,
So, in your opinion, what are the 2 BNR cards that Guardians ends up taking?
I think you can make a case for various ones. I personally really like Bitter Rivals with Guardians. I think they're
Mm-hmm.
one of the better Bitter Rivals teams. And they want to play those fighty central crises where Bitter Rivals really shines. So I'm a big fan of that. And then after that, I think you can make a case for field dressing. I think field dressing and Bitter Rivals are my 2 personal favorites with Guardians. But I wouldn't hold it against you if you took any combination of the restricted cards, right? Medpack, Brace, Patch Up are all good cards. And certainly Medpack and Patch Up overlap with this card, right? With We Are Groot.
See, and I agree with you on the Bitter Rivals, and then I agree on field dressing. I also rank Brace higher, And the reason being, we talked about it, these characters, for the most part, outside of Groot, don't have these large ablative hit point pools. Brace just kind of stopping the damage versus I have to live through the thing to take the heal is one of the reasons that I put the heals a little lower. So that does fight with me liking We Are Groot.
Yeah,
Um,
I think with Brace, it depends a lot on what specific Guardians you intend to take off them. Because Groot and Drax are pretty resilient to collisions, and Rocket's immune to them.
mhm.
Star Lord, in my experience, not always, but a lot of the time can be quite far away. Um, and if your unaffiliated includes are very resilient to collision, then maybe you don't need Brace. I think probably it's there primarily to protect whatever those characters are.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I like Brace is when I'm playing Guardians, at least I end up with this blob and my characters just get thrown into each other a lot, which is why I prioritize Brace and Indomitable pretty highly.
Mhm.
But I do understand your point, right? I love X-23 and Honey Badger in there, and both of them are okay into throws. Um,
It's not great that X-23 is size 3 when you throw her into her buddies.
yeah, 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 but they're okay. But again, I think we kind of agree there. So after we have the two of those, they don't have a great unaffiliated card, but we do like. I think if we're playing Guardians, we want Deadly Duo just because we want volume of attacks out there.
Right, and this is another reason why, for me, We Are Groot gets taken less often, because I really dislike taking multiple character-specific cards for a single character, because of the fact they all cost power to use. And once you start stacking those power requirements on top of each other, it becomes difficult to meet them all. So it's much harder to use We Are Groot when you're also planning to use Deadly Duo. And I really, really like Deadly Duo.
Yeah, and Groot is a character that doesn't generate a ton of power unless you're punching him in the face a lot, right?
Right.
He's got a range 3 uh, power equal to damage done strike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
And because he can self heal, okay, sometimes stacking those heals will be good, but oftentimes the effect of the card healing himself is less useful than it might be on another character.
yeah, I mean it is less efficient for him to use We Are Groot than Living Plant, right? By a long shot there.
Yeah.
Um, so I still like the card. I think I'd take it if I was anticipating a lot of chip damage, if I think I'm going to be into a lot of beams, or honestly, if I think I'm going to take a lot of gamma damage from gamma, where I know that there's just going to be a lot of damage kind of spread out. Traps is another one maybe I take it on, right? Where I know that there's just going to be some chip damage thrown around.
Yeah.
So I like the card. I would make room for it in my 10 if I was playing Guardians, and then I'd bring it into my 5 situation. Like, what about you, Pat?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I have it in my 10 in my current Guardians roster, but I'm never bringing it into my 5. And I think I just need to be a little bit more courageous in when I take it. Another crisis that I enjoy with Guardians that you didn't mention that you've made me realize would probably be really good with this card is Cosmic Q Fragments, right? Where I'm spreading damage across my team and I'm powering up Groot with a fragment so he can actually use this more easily.
Yeah, I think that's a great inclusion there too. So I think we're both tentatively sleeving We Are Groot.
Yeah, I'll
Awesome.
sleeve it.
Awesome. I'm excited for that.